Welcome to Prosecco and Prose, Episode 4.
This week's Prosecco is Monteliana.
This week's prose is Letter of Apology by Maria Reva. Thank you for joining us for an episode of Prosecco and Prose. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Amy. This is a deep dive virtual book club hosted by two English teachers and army wives who love to read and love the bubbly.
In each episode, we will feature a discussion on a novel from our local DC Metro book club.
Or we will chat about some of the latest and greatest pieces of prose.
We will also answer questions our friends send us in our sparkling wine box.
She said sparkling wine box. What an oxymoron.
So sit back and pop a cork for this week's episode of Prosecco and Prose.
For those of you who are listening in the car, please don't drink and drive. Save the bubbly for later. In this episode, we will discuss Maria Reva's short story, The Apology Letter. It was published in November 2018's issue of Granta, but is also included in the Best American Stories 2019, as well as her recently published March 2020 collection of short stories, Good Citizens Need Not Fear. This collection is actually broken into two parts, before the fall and after the fall. Our short Letter of Apology falls into the former, giving us some context of the time frame.
Right, and we are talking about the fall of the USSR. Now, Maria Reva was born in Ukraine and grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia. She currently lives in Austin, Texas. She is the recipient of several awards: National Magazine Award for Fiction 2019, RBC Browen Wallace Award for Emerging Writers 2018. Do you know that this award has a proven track record for identifying future writing stars?
I did not, but I definitely think it was well-deserved for Ms. Reva. She is a writing star in my book. I even purchased the Audible version of Good Citizens Need Not Fear so I can listen to her stories while I'm out strolling around on my walks.
Definitely a book I'll be adding to my collection. She's also been a finalist for several short story and fiction contests, and in addition to writing fiction, writes opera libretti.
Opera libretti? Libretti? Librato? Potato? Give me a bowl of borscht. Just fill me in on the concept of this that we call libretti.
I'd love to. So, you know how a play has a script? Well, an opera has a text as well, and Miss Reva writes those.
Wow, that is interesting. I did not know that.
Neither did I.
Very cool. All right, friends, you know the deal. If you have not read the short story yet and do not want the spoilers, please pause this episode and rejoin us when you have finished Maria Reva's piece.
We came upon this short when searching the Google webs.
Hey, that's my term.
I know, but I like it and I want to use it. But anyways, we put it in our to-be-read list,
which moved quickly to the top. I connected with this piece as in my past life, not only was I an English teacher, but I was also an investigator, much like Mikkel. Not like, you would say a KGB, FBI, or CIA investigator. I just dabbled in security clearances for government and industry folks. Rewarding work, but no room for creative writing of themes, symbols, and motifs. I so just wanted to start all my reports of investigation with, once upon a time, at a metro stop of Foggy Bottom, there lived a troll.
Okay, we get it. I'm going to take it you're not missing the technical writing?
Not in the least. I like reading, writing, and podcasting so much better. So how did you connect with this story, Wendy?
Well, it popped up on a list of best short stories. I love lists, and the opening line really drew me in immediately. One can only argue with an intellectual like Konstantin Ilyich if one speaks to him on his level.
Was such a good line, and I'm up for the intellectual challenge. But before we go there, let's introduce our characters and give our friends a brief summary so we can then dig in and discuss all the good stuff. What do you think, Wendy?
Okay, I think so. We have three primary characters here. Now, we were lucky enough to be able to connect with the author, Miss Reva, for proper pronunciations, so we are going to try our very best to not botch them. Konstantin is our antagonist, 45, married, a former competitive fencer, and a celebrated poet.
But he has told a political joke that ruffled some bureaucratic feathers. And then we have Mikhail Igorovich, our protagonist and narrator. He's a KGB officer tasked with eliciting an apology letter from our treasonous poet.
Well, To come back to my earlier quote, Mikhail is one of the few in that branch of the agency with a higher education, and so could, presumably, enter a battle of wits with Konstantin.
Right.
And then we have Milena, Konstantin's presumed wife, possibly Mikhail's superior?
Possibly, but let's not give anything away yet about a woman being in charge. Oh, and just one more thing before we recap. Didn't you say you came across Miss Reva talking about her inspiration for the short story while searching the Google web?
Way to take your word back. But yes, I did. She said she had read that the KGB had to stop arresting citizens for telling political jokes in the 1960s. Partly because it was impossible to lock up the entire Soviet Union. So officers were to engage offenders in a re-educational conversation and have them submit a letter of apology. She also said that shortly after she learned this, her father told her that the KGB tried to recruit him to the honor guard in the 80s. He was a model student and athlete, but the last thing he wanted to do was to guard Lenin's tomb. This was on a lovely lit blog, A Just Recompense, by Karen Carlson.
I love knowing a little bit about a story's backstory, and you can definitely see that inspiration play out here. So our story opens with our narrator telling us he has been tasked to do a little re-education of Konstantin after he told a political joke, so offensive that even Mikhail's superior cannot repeat it.
Right. Must be quite the joke. Anyway, Mikhail heads out to Konstantin and Milena's dacha, which is a little summer house.
Summer house in the Ugly Swamp.
True. There is a great discussion of the location of this summer.
I love saying that word.
So there's a great description of the location of this summer or second home. Just know that spring snowmelt requires movement among these little cottages to be by rowboat. So Mikhail intends to approach Konstantin privately due to the sensitive manner and have a, air quote, conversation with him, obtain a letter of apology from him, and the matter would be wrapped up. Mikhail lets the reader know that he's quite good at this. He's done it dozens of times and even takes a bit of pride in his celebrity of being able to accomplish such tasks in well under the 30-day deadline.
Because if the conversation didn't work, there was always the threat of loss of employment or arrest as a last resort.
Well, the prisons can no longer accommodate every citizen who utters a joke, which leads the party to be more forgiving.
But Konstantin is not such an easy mark when Mikhail makes his visit. He tells him he's not putting anything in writing and asks Mikhail if he's ever read any of his poetry, and then he invites him to his next poetry reading.
Mikhail definitely has his work cut out for him, getting this letter of apology from Konstantin. He starts to follow him everywhere.
And it does start to rattle Konstantin. But then comes his poetry reading. After Konstantin reads his poems, he challenges the audience to a game. Fun. And you know I love a good game.
I know you do. So Konstantin will recite a poem, and the audience will guess who wrote it. The prize? Well, if you're correct, those in attendance will admire you. Get it wrong?
And face eternal shame. Dun, dun, dun. They should have considered taking shots of Prosecco.
You mean vodka?
Well, either or. That would not have been punishment.
No, probably not.
Well, guess eternal shame it is. Konstantin recites poems, the audience responds, and everyone is having a great time. Then he recites a simple 2-word poem and challenges Mikhail directly.
But Mikhail is unable to rise to the challenge, and the crowd finally shouts the answer.
Mikhail is shamed by his own prey. This is about the time he starts to suspect that while he's been tailing Konstantin, Milena's been tailing him. And Mikhail thinks his mission to get the apology letter is really a guise of a test for him.
Here we learn that Mikhail's mother, who has been a model student, fiercest marcher, loudest voice, champion archer, had supposedly been selected to join the honor guard to train and guard Lenin's mausoleum. She was summoned to Moscow, but Mikhail and his father could not join her as they never married. About a year later, his father left and joined his mother, and Mikhail's grandparents told him that one day he will join them as well.
Now, Mikhail has been waiting his entire life for his own summoning to Moscow. And when Milena starts following him, he feels she's vetting him for this very special task, joining the honor guard. He seems so delusional. What do you think?
Well, I'm holding out judgment on that for now. So Mikhail follows Konstantin. Milena follows Mikhail. And one night, after helping Konstantin with a large sack of sugar that had a tear in it, The three of them end up in Constantine's apartment drinking what I would call moonshine and eating sprats. The apology letter is now due in 15 days, and when Mikhail brings it up, Constantine is dismissive.
Mikhail's superior even starts to question him, and Mikhail's other work has also started to slide. He's very focused on what he now believes is a preamble to reuniting with his parents. So, Mikhail follows Constantine to the movies, and Milena follows Mikhail. And after the show, she tells Mikhail to meet her at the dacha at midnight. It is she who will give him the letter.
Mikhail thinks this is the final task, and in the pitch-black night, finally makes it to the dacha where he encounters Milena in fencing attire. She ties his ankles and gags him. She then proceeds to pour hot wax on his fingers and head while naming her relatives that had been executed.
Mikhail tells her they are not too different. He grew up alone too, and once she inducts him into the honor guard, he will see his family again. Milena laughs as if she's been told a joke, which immediately changes the tone. And Mikhail starts to have a revelation of what actually happened to his family.
Milena wraps up her little torture session. Mikhail knows it will be he who is writing the letter of apology to his superior and asks Milena what was the joke Constantine told.
She tells him, though it is redacted for the reader, and Mikhail comments that it's not even funny.
I loved that ending. I mean, it was so perfect to me. Now, an extra special treat of this piece was the poetry throughout the short. Amy, I know poetry is one of your favorites.
It is. I could hardly wait for an episode where we could hone in on poetry.
Well, great. So, would you like to get us started?
I thought you'd never ask. The story begins with an epigraph, which is a type of passage, poem, or quote to shed light on something. For this story, we're shedding light on a warning. It starts with the two words, "don't think." And then it goes on to tell you how you should respond if you cannot obey that simple command.
Right. And it's in graduated steps so you can hopefully stop before you go too far.
Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and read the epigraph as it's stated in Miss Reva's piece. Don't think. If you think, don't speak. If you think and speak, don't write. If you think, speak, and write, don't sign. If you think, speak, write, and sign, don't be surprised.
It's definitely unsettling. I mean, what might we be surprised by? That's what I kept coming back to. So Ms. Reva told us this was a common saying or joke in the USSR, and according to a wiki article she sent us, it's known as the 5 precepts or doctrine of the Soviet intelligentsia.
Well, it put a fear in the depths of my soul when reading it for the first time. The authoritative epigraph made me feel like Big Brother was ordering me to do the right thing.
Or suffer the consequences.
Maybe.
Maybe that's the surprise.
Here's the thing, Wendy. We all have the ability to think. I mean, we think without even thinking we're thinking, right?
Right.
But now we, the reader, are given this admonition to just act and do. Do not speak your thoughts, but if you foolishly do, then don't write them for the world to see. And definitely don't sign them. But if you do manage to somehow ignore all the warnings and put the spoken, written, or gestured word out into society, as Constantine did, then you need to be prepared for the consequences.
Well, this plays right into our theme of control.
So overarching throughout this entire piece.
It really is, Amy. Ultimately, one should be able to control oneself, starting with thoughts. But if one can't, well, the system will. It really had me thinking about, about Pink Floyd, The Wall. Love that movie, okay?
That was a great movie.
Great
I didn't
movie.
even put 2 and 2 together there.
Great movie, great album. So in Pink Floyd, The Wall, the school was in place to teach mind control, right? Okay? It's growing citizens to become, forgive my singing,
Just another brick in the wall. Boom!
Yeah.
Boom!
Right? Constantine, a poet, probably a bit of a free thinker, refuses to march.
Right. And also refuses to apologize, even though it felt like he had admitted to his misdeed. He asks, "So, what's the joke?" without any prompting on that part of Mikhail, who simply called it a wrongful evaluation. Constantine, like me, is not about to fall under someone else's control.
He is not. In fact, it appears that Constantine might control Mikhail's future if he is unable to get the letter of apology. I mean, since the threat of present is really an empty one, which I have no doubt Constantine probably knows.
This control plays out in a few ways. First, even the superior cannot repeat the joke to Mikhail. His control is coming from at least one level above Mikhail. Mikhail is controlled by the order to go to Constantine and retrieve the letter of apology.
We know that every citizen has a file to their name. I'm thinking this file would contain information such as money, medical, misdemeanors on the individual citizens for leverage should the need arise. Meaning, if they were not falling under control.
It does appear that way. Now, I thought it was very interesting how Mikhail had no problem following orders. He certainly seemed to be an act and do kind of guy. He didn't even think ahead about procuring a boat for visiting Constantine out in the swamps. A good investigator plans ahead. At least that has been my training.
Well, I mean, thinking is the first command given, Amy.
You're right.
The others are only given if you miss following the first. Mikhail does not think. He follows orders, and it seems he's quite good at it until he's assigned to Constantine's case.
And while Mikhail's initial telling of Constantine does rattle him a bit, the poetry reading is where the tables start to turn. Constantine definitely takes control when he calls Mikhail out to answer who wrote the poem, whom. Short for who will overtake whom. Possibility of foreshadowing, maybe?
Let's see where that might take us. Somewhere it will.
Hopefully.
Anyway, Mikhail, he can't answer. A fellow audience member, this was kind of humorous to me, even tries to help him by whispering the answer, and Mikhail finds this to be an extremely poor taste.
He did.
But then, as he starts to think of this as his first failure and his control begins to crumble, or at least his control in the situation with Constantine, Mikhail also suspects that Milena has been following him.
Which would put Milena in the control seat. Because now, when Mikhail is following Constantine, he is always aware that Milena is following him.
And she loves to give him orders, doesn't she?
Did.
If Constantine is shortchanged, Milena tells Mikhail to give him one. If Mikhail drops so much as a sunflower seed, she tells him where to find it. Even when she laughed, he felt compelled to laugh as well, not realizing he is the butt of the joke.
Exactly. Mikhail assumes Milena's file is bare because she outranks him, as there was always the possibility of her being the one tasked to observe him. Someone's always watching. You just never know who. He considers her a master observer. The description with the sprats in the apartment shows her skill. Mikhail seems to feel he is on some kind of level with Milena when he notices that she chewed her sprat before the first shot, just like he did. However, all she would have needed to do was observe him first, and then mirror his actions, thereby creating a false connection.
Well, I feel like Mikhail is desperate to make meaning as to why he has not received the letter of apology yet, and it feels like he loses even more control here in the apartment. Constantine calls him by a nickname, Misha, and even later we learn that Milena has followed him into his dreams, telling Mikhail and them that he is being watched over.
It makes me think, Mikhail is supposed to have the control here, but really, he's been controlled ever since, first his mother and then his father disappeared when he was a child. He's obviously lost control of this investigation. As a former investigator, that is a big tenet. Once you've lost control and you no longer have the upper hand, it is nearly impossible to obtain the information you need. It's a bit of what I'd call foreshadowing that he may not get his letter.
I never thought of it that way. And, Milena, to me, has secured the upper hand. Now, I know we were going to cover the poems first, but this is such a perfect segue into the theme of faith versus doubt.
Faith? I'm not sure I'm following, Wendy. I didn't get a religious feel from this.
Okay, not faith like religion, but like faith in the system, the state. But keep in mind, the overarching theme of control is going to pop up here as well.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Go ahead.
Okay, so Mikhail has really been operating on this blind faith that he will eventually see his parents again.
But, it seems obvious to the reader, well, to me anyway, that his parents were not selected for this special assignment to join the honor guard. I mean, they weren't even married, and his mother had too loud of a voice. Obviously, she was outspoken. It even seems she may have gotten a warning when the first officer visited. She did get a summoning, which it appears she ignored. Again, bringing us back to the theme of control. And here she was, kind of trying to exert some. Then there was the prized cactus collection, which she was awarded a red ribbon for. Mikhail's father would wrap his hands around it to inflict pain on himself every night after his wife was, shall we say, selected.
I agree. Mikhail's father tries to exert some control, himself by doing this. He was unable to protect the mother of his child, so it is a self-imposed punishment. The reader is obviously privy to information Mikhail is not, but Mikhail is blindly faithful to the state that he will be joining his family in the esteemed honor guard someday. It's just that he needs to be, patient. And when Milena enters and is a better observer than he is, it feeds into his faith, his belief really, that it has all been a matter of time. His task, that of retrieving the letter of apology, is now at hand. And since getting into the honor guard is quite the honor, it serves to reason that obtaining this letter is more difficult than the letters in the past.
Well, he definitely feels the honor guard is his destiny, and Milena is the final step to achieving this. When she summons him to the dacha after watching the animated film Hedgehog in the Fog, showing control over him, he follows her command as he can only dream of the boots and decorations his honor guard uniform will have.
Exactly. Once his mind was made up that getting the letter was his final task, he let other work obligations slide and didn't even seem all that bothered when his superior made a dig at his lack of ability to get the letter from someone who was actually a skilled writer. Mikhail wouldn't even resort to bribery. It just didn't feel right to him. And maybe he thought it would tarnish him or it would fail his mission if he resorted to such tactics.
It was interesting. Clearly, it's an option that has been used in the past. But to go back to the movie...
Of course, we watched it.
We did. I had to agree with Mikhail in that I found it a little bit unsettling. But, it was also eerie. Hedgehog's question is, what happens to the white horse in the fog? If you cannot see something, is it really there? Mikhail wonders if Hedgehog would prefer to keep the fog or lift it to discover what was there. Mikhail wants to keep the fog.
Well, think about it. If he keeps the fog, then he can continue to believe, to have faith, that his parents are alive and proudly serving in the honor guard. I feel it's here that we really see his doubts begin to materialize, though. I think the thing that stuck with me in the movie was the anxiety Hedgehog feels even after meeting up with his friend Bear. I believe Mikhail also has this underlying anxiety about what really happened to his parents, which is why the movie affects him so. I really loved what this animated short added to the story, so I definitely suggest if you read the story to also check out the movie.
I agree. So if I may tangent a bit, me and my symbols.
I do.
And this movie is loaded with symbols.
Like a baked potato.
Mm-hmm. So I have to just mention a few I found in the movie instead of wait until we are finished with themes.
Okay.
But first, there's this owl. Mm-hmm. An owl is a symbol of wisdom, keen observer. An owl is patient. This is Milena to me. She is wise to her family's demise. She has obviously been observing Mikhail, and she's been patient in her plan. She's been watching, like the owl is watching in the movie. You think the owl is gone, and then when you least expect it, it pops back in. Owls are considered to have the ability to see what others cannot see. Milena knows something about Mikhail that he does not know yet.
I definitely think you are onto something. The hedgehog, though, has got to be Mikhail. You think?
Maybe.
This is an interesting paradox. A hedgehog symbolizes curiosity and uniqueness, two qualities I would not attribute to Mikhail, but it also symbolizes calmness, intelligence, and compliance. We know he's frustrated about not getting the letter, but he doesn't react, and he's the smartest in that particular KGB branch, and he's obviously been compliant his whole life.
Well, an investigator always has to stay compliant. He has been nothing but compliant for sure. But the final symbol I want to touch on is the elephant. The proverbial elephant in the room.
Okay.
In the movie, it is just for a brief flash, but I found it so telling of Mikhail's parents' demise. This elephant has been just out of sight his whole life, but Milena brings it into his vision.
And now he cannot unsee the truth.
That's true.
So to return to this faith versus doubt path, when Milena summons him, faith is restored and doubt is gone. I mean, it really fits into his narrative that she will get him the letter. It wasn't really about Constantine all along.
It does make you wonder, though. But we have this really uncomfortable but extremely well-written scene play out between Milena and Mikhail. Her family has also disappeared when she was young, and while Mikhail sees them as similar...
Milena sees him as the enemy, okay? I mean, Mikhail is part of the problem.
I agree.
After all, he already works for the agency, so I get the sense that she blames him for her family's disappearance.
We see these two very different interpretations and even responses from Milena and Mikhail in the loss of their families. Milena has been waiting for the time to come for her to exact her revenge, and Mikhail has been waiting for the time he will join his parents in Moscow.
When Milena completely debases him, doubt takes him down one clear realization at a time until he comes to the epiphany that his parents are gone. They're dead.
I can't help but come back to the theme of control. The epigraph we mentioned at the beginning about not thinking, speaking, writing, or signing undoubtedly sets the tone for this whole piece. It's all about control and who has it at any given time. It's transferable. And we see the control shift throughout, although Milena does appear to have the edge.
Do you remember our foreshadowing with the Who Whom poem?
I do.
So you might have thought that Constantine would have been the one to end up on top, but with one long stroke of her rapier, Milena effectively gains total control.
Not only that, Wendy, she tells Mikhail the offending joke. She's the only one who dares to repeat the wrongful evaluation. I think we lost a bit of control in our themes here. Can we get back to my favorite, the poetry?
Yes, of course, Amy. We did go off on a tangent. How about starting with the Gears poem?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and read it for us?
Okay.
I'd love to hear how you read a poem.
I am not a poet. This is probably not the interpretation, but I will do my best.
Please do.
Helical gears, cluster gears, rack gears, bevel and miter gears, worm gears, spur gears, ratchet and pawl gears, internal spur gears, grind my body, meat grinder, grinds, grr, 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 ah, 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 aha.
That was amazing. That was not too far off the Audible book.
Are you serious?
Really good.
Thank you.
God.
I think I'm blushing.
You are. But to me, the gears within the context of the poem reminded me of the different types of people in a society. The helical gears, these are the quiet folks who conform to society's rules. The cluster gears, these are the folks of different sizes. The rack gears represent those who are driven. The bevel and miter gears represent those that are inseparable and mate together. Now the worm gears, these are the people who help change the ways of the world.
Like Constantine, maybe?
Maybe. So then we have the spur gears, those who are commonly loud.
Oh, that's Mikhail's mother.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the ratchet and pawl gears that represent people who are narrow in scope and only move in one direction. You know, kind of like Mikhail. Then we have the internal spur gears. Those operate on the inside, leaving a clean operation, almost like it's not even there. Maybe Melina?
Oh, I love that. I mean, I can see how these gears can easily represent society as a whole. You definitely, painted them in a whole different
picture. I wanted
to
capture it.
You did, Amy. You really did. However, I feel the Ukrainian people are losing their individuality. I mean, the introductory epigraph is a form of Big Brother directing each citizen's actions.
The lifeblood that makes them unique is being industrialized. It's being crushed, shaped, pounded into what the society deems acceptable.
The onomatopoeic sounds in the poem represent the pain of the machine. The system erasing freedom's identity. The final is this acceptance of conformity. They're just done.
Amazing.
It's defeated. Next poem?
Sure, my turn.
All right.
The bear bears his flesh, skinless, bears the burden of the air. Whoosh.
Can I start with this one? Because
Sure.
poetry is not kind of my thing.
Sure.
But, okay. This one was a little bit easier for me to grasp, I think. Poetry isn't something I've dabbled in a lot.
It's okay.
So I want to give you my interpretation first and then see where it took you. Okay?
Yeah.
So I like the use of the homophones bear, bear, and bear.
I mean, you've taught those a lot in school.
I have a lot. So the animal is a symbol of authority, but it's exposed or bare here. And it's having to bear, hold this burden of society. And now they're seeing him as he really is, which is maybe not so powerful and all-knowing.
You know what? We are not too far off in our interpretation.
Are you serious?
No. So listen to this. The imagery in this poem gave me a vision of oppression. The essence of the poem, the bear bears his flesh, skinless, bears the burden of the air, whoosh, is about an oppressed society exposing themselves. They are now vulnerable and subjected to expel the truth or live in someone else's truth. The whoosh is nothing more than the onomatopoeic sound of life being sucked in or being pushed out.
Wow. I didn't do too bad.
No.
I think I'm warming up to an episode of poetry, Amy.
I can't wait.
Let me read the last poem and you finish us out strong, okay?
Okay.
Dewy forget me not me forgets. Stomp.
Hey, not bad.
Thank you.
You're 2 for 2. This poem was so depressing. The flower, the forget-me-not.
You mean Myosotis scorpioids?
Okay, Bill Nye, my science guy.
I gotta have something.
Whatever. The forget-me-not is supposed to signify love and remembrance. I have a cluster bunch tattooed on my back. See? See?
What? I had no idea. I do see.
It's one of the most beautiful flowers that grows in the wild. Kind of wild like me. It's contagious. It spreads its love for all those to see and comes back year after year, showing its loyalty.
I have to say that's an excellent description of you.
Thank you. But, it adapts to change, sort of like we military wives, military families. We're very resilient. Now, let's get back to the poem. We are given a darker, more depressive look at this flower. The beauty, even in its wet existence, cannot be forgotten. The only way to forget it is to kill. And to kill here is to stomp the life out of it, so it will die. This poem just ruined the essence of my tattoo. I know when I get old and skin like the bear, my forget-me-not will look like a tumbleweed blowing across the highway from Montana over to your parts, North Dakota. I'm so sorry.
I literally have no words. Do you guys see what I'm working with? What a way to ruin an image. So I would like, can I rein you in? Can I rein you in? I would like to mention in regards to this particular poem, I felt it was another foreshadowing. Mikhail has not forgotten about his parents, but his visions are about to be stomped on and erased, just like his family was erased and forgotten.
My tutelage of you is coming along nicely, Wendy.
Why, thank you.
It's only 2 words, but we must discuss the last poem, which we already have mentioned several times throughout our episode here.
You are speaking of Grandfather Lenin's phrase.
Ah, yes, my dear. So we have already discussed that Mikhail felt this was a test, but it was also Konstantine's chance to mock the system and Mikhail.
Ooh.
It's about class struggle. As mentioned, whom is shorthand for who will overtake whom. But there is so much more to these 2 words. Both words are obviously pronouns. We don't know who and whom are.
Wait, I'm trying to follow you.
Well, we don't know who the speaker is referring to.
Oh.
Or do we?
Oh.
Just to keep things interesting.
Oh, they're interesting.
So the question is, who will overtake whom? And it's Constantine who ends up owning Mikhail in front of the people, the gears.
Mm-hmm.
He even tis him in the story as if he was punishing him with lashes of a whip. My fear after reading this was that there would be a big price for him to pay.
There's always a price to pay. Always. But it's Milena who ultimately overtakes Mikhail, don't you think?
Oh, I'd agree.
Now, before we wrap up this amazing story, would you please give us your thoughts on the symbolism of the numbers in this piece? It was really interesting to me.
Sure, Wendy. So our listeners are used to hearing us discuss color symbology. There is a lot of it in here, but we're going to take a little bit of a different path. But the late, great Pythagoras found magic and a soul in numbers. You can look at them through the lens of religion, astrology, and even tarot, if you dare to go there.
Okay. Aunt Dot and Aunt Carol, this voodoo stuff may not be for your ears. Now me, I'm going to need a refill if we are heading down this path.
Okay, so you're full. I'm full.
I'm
you're
ready.
full. I think we can finish out this episode.
I am topped off.
Okay, so we're going to keep this top level. No voodoo, I promise. I went back to my box of school notes as I recalled having some notes on playing card suits. Remember when Mikhail first came upon Konstantin and Milena?
I do. They were playing cards. Hold on a second. The passage says his wife placed a 4 of spades on the table.
Correct. So let's visit the suit of spades. This suit symbolizes clarity and truth, and the spade, it symbolizes a sword. How convenient.
No way does one not plant that in a story without knowing this info. I mean, we're given clarity at the end and find out the truth as to what truly happened to Mikhail's family. Well, I mean, Mikhail found truth. I think we, the reader, had a bit more clarity than Mikhail.
But Wendy, I also found that the 4 of spades shows that things will soon become stable. Order will prevail. Chaos or trouble will soon pass. Now, I wonder how intentional Miss Reva was in choosing this subtle detail of the card. Or just maybe the stars aligned.
Looks to be a little irony and a bit of foreshadowing for the denouement of the story.
Maybe. But listen to this. I also noticed a countdown of numbers in Reva's masterpiece. Kind of like a clock ticking. Something waiting to detonate.
Okay.
Let me quote some of her text.
All right. Do you have it?
Yep, I got it here. Okay. So if I stood 5 spots behind Konstantin in line for sausage, the hooded figure, I'm talking Milena, stood 4 spots behind me. If I sat 3 benches from Konstantin, Milena was 2 benches over. The task of retrieving the letter of apology, 1, was in a new light.
Wow. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There really is a sense of a countdown.
And don't forget, now, Konstantin also gave Mikhail a 3-2-1 countdown for the Who-Whom poem. We just knew how that one was going to end.
Not too well. But okay there, smarty pants. Let's go back to the beginning, though. The first number we encounter is 97. Directive number 97. To eliminate dissemination of untruths among party cadre and the KGB.
Yes, and this is interesting, a bit of irony. 97 signifies tolerance, introspection, and the welfare of humankind. Now, I suppose you could say the directive does look out for someone's welfare.
Right. Those in a position of power, looking out for themselves.
True. But the directive is only concerned with the humanity that has fallen in line, not those that operate outside the boundaries. Konstantin.
Right.
So humanity is quite a selective term here.
It certainly seems so. But you also said it signifies tolerance and introspection, right? So I'm not seeing a lot of that.
So one could interpret that the branch is a little more tolerable as they choose to re-educate minor crimes rather than, a prison sentence.
Oh, how convenient, since they are overflowing.
And one has to use some introspection when he or she writes a letter of apology, correct?
I'll give you that, okay. Sure. So the next number, we have this sweet 76, right? It's the number on Konstantin's apartment. I mean, we have our 7 again. What did you find on that combo of numbers?
Well, 76 represents introspection. Also has a focus on analyzing before proceeding to action and with building a foundation for the future. So this number represents Konstantin well. Introspective. He's a poet. Intuitive. He knows Mikhail came about this joke, and he seems to have an intuition about Mikhail because he outwits him. Also, Konstantin is a thinker. No rush to action for him, meaning the letter.
True, but the irony with this number is the pragmatism. Constantine is not really pragmatic, right?
Nope.
So let's go on to the last couple of numbers. 9th floor, and the apartment is just a bit smaller than the standard 9 square meters.
So we have our 9 here again. 9 portrays creativity, intelligence, and insight. Now this is only scratching the surface, but I would say those traits all apply to Constantine. Of course, he's on the 9th floor.
You know, we have this repetition of the 9 and the 7, and I was just doing a little math. I mean, you've got me all intrigued with this number symbology. Did you know that 9 square meters is equal to 96.875 square feet?
Nope, I did not, and I don't care.
You do care, because remember the countdown? We now have 9, 8, 7, 6.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop the mic. I told you this number stuff would suck you in. Whoosh.
Wow, what a story. We've got prose, poetry, animated picture show. Is there anything this author can't do?
I don't know, but I'm going to be reading more from Maria Reva.
Me too.
Well, we at least scratched the surface of this piece. We'd love to hear what you found, what spoke to you. Hit us up on any of our social media platforms.
I loved this piece, and I was so excited to get her sound bites for pronunciation purposes. I really hope we did it okay.
I do too.
Friends, please support our author by reading her work. She is a skilled writer and one that I will definitely revisit.
Okay, Wendy, sparkle and wine time.
Let's do it.
So guys, we got some very informative Bog Girl feedback and a geography lesson from Heidi M., a former Ireland resident who now lives in Italy. Italy, guys!
Cool.
Goodness. She gave us a feminist look at the piece and told us that Gillian did not act like an Irish mother to her.
She also schooled us on the particulars of North and South Ireland.
You know what, Wendy? Let's just let her tell us.
Okay.
I listened to the Bog Girl last night while I was shelling peas. And yes, it was quite an interesting story. I enjoyed it. And my thought coming away from it, since you wanted feedback and all, was how like a man, eh? He loves her whenever, like, she can say nothing, and he assumes she says this, and he assumes that she wears that, and he assumes she thinks this and means that. And the minute she wakens up and all his assumptions are out the window, he just wants to put her back in the bog. So that's my feminist point of view of the story. Oh, and one other thing, because now I have been out in my garden and I've had all kinds of time to stew and remember what you and your friend talked about. But I have serious doubts about that taking place in Northern Ireland. So you were saying that you wanted to hear what our thoughts were, and I'll tell you why I don't think it's taking place in Northern Ireland unless it's some minor island off the coast. Anyway, maybe Scotland or something, I don't know. But knowing the character of the Irish people, that mother does not act like a Northern Irish mother, because these Northern Irish mothers have a lot of attitude. The Southern ones do too. And it just seems to be the Irish people are real characters, and she kind of just lays down and lets her son do what he wants. I don't know if you could liken what the mothers are like in that country to like a little bit what black mothers are like. They wouldn't be laying down and taking anything, especially not from their only son. And more eggs in the one basket, like if you can follow me. The stronger the mother becomes, she would have said, "You're not going to lock the door, I'm coming in." She would have stormed the place for a typical person for that. So the voice didn't seem like Northern Irish mother. The other thing was that they said if this had taken place in Ireland, then it would be different. So if in Ireland, they would have taken the corpse and studied it. In the north of Ireland, they would have done it more so because things work okay in the south, but they work extremely well in the north. So if you could nearly get away with saying in the south of Ireland, a fella could go around with a corpse, but you couldn't do it the other way around. Like if you can't get away with it in the north, maybe you can in the south, but if you can't get away with it in the south, then you definitely cannot get away with it in the north. And so for those two reasons, I don't know if you follow me, but I think it had to have taken place on some little island. Some island in the Atlantic or in the Irish Sea or some place like that, a kind of a small place, not the island like the Emerald Isle. So those are my thoughts. I'm having lots of fun thinking about these books. It beats, like thinking about the husband and how much he's getting on my nerves as he stands here beside me.
That was definitely a point of view we weren't expecting, but it really provided depth to the discussion. Thanks, Heidi, for your feedback.
And we can always count on our DC Book Club member Sadie for some great feedback.
Always.
She commented on the names in speech sounds. She wrote, in regards to obsidian, you guys mentioned that Peter was a possible option, but that it didn't make much sense.
True, it didn't at the time.
No. She explained that even though this is not a religious story by any means, I think this was a reference to Jesus talking to Peter when he told him, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church."
This is why we love feedback. I didn't even consider a religious spin on Peter. But Sadie also noted the points we made in regards to rye and obsidian's name. We said rye is a grain, something living and growing and life-giving, and obsidian, though beautiful, is cold and essentially dead. Sadie said that it makes sense that rye lives and obsidian dies.
Touché. And thank you, Sadie. Wow. Please keep the comments coming. And please check out Maria Reva's work. You won't be disappointed. Be sure to share our podcast with at least one person who loves literature to help us grow.
That's it, Wendy, for our bubbly. Guys, join us next time when we discuss Lisa Jewell's novel, Then She Was Gone.
Thank you again for joining us for this episode of Prosecco in Prose. Please subscribe to our podcast wherever you download all your favorite podcasts.
We would love to hear your reviews or special requests on future pieces of prose. We want to hear your voice as this is your book club.
You can also send your questions and comments to prosecco.prose@gmail.com.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PNProse.
And on Instagram at Prosecco and Prose.
Find and friend us on Facebook. Just plug in Prosecco space capital N space Prose. I'm Amy.
And I'm Wendy, signing off as our bottle of bubbly is now empty.
See you for our next episode, and in the meantime, pop a cork and read.